this point, I might pursue this conversation with Dave Fishwick. Banker Dave is here, and I'm going to come back to both of you in a minute or two, if you don't mind. But I am just going to pick up on... I mean, look, you've made a bob or two, but you also spend a lot of time trying to help people on low incomes. I mean, do you actually happen to think that whether it's a wealth tax or higher rates of tax paid by wealthier, richer, higher-earning people, is that the way to go?
Well, I think the wealthiest do need to... You know, they've got the largest shoulders, and they do need to take care of the biggest burden there.
But
however,
should they be doing more?
Well, I think, yes, I think they should, but I also think it's not just the people with 10 million. I think we need to be looking at the people on Amazon and people on all the big coffee sort of shops and things where we've got hundreds of billions of pounds of money, and you've got places like Apple, you know, that pay nothing, you know, but they use everything in the UK. So I think it's about looking at a fairer system. There needs to be a net for people to fall on and bounce back up to contribute to society. People need to pay their fair share, but you can't keep pushing people who are on £500 a week, £300 a week, £200 a week, £800 a week, £1,000. You know, you can't keep taking more off the Middle England.
And can I just ask you, you know, in your neck of the woods, you know, you got well known by creating an institution to help people set up their own businesses. These are often people with, as I say, low incomes. How are they feeling at the moment? Is there? Do you think there's a sense that things are getting a bit better?
Well, people are writing to me more and more now. I'm getting hundreds of letters. One in particular that jumps to me there, a special needs school, Robert, have come to me and said, David, you know, we've got this breakfast club. We're getting the 75%.
And this is a breakfast club set up by the government?
Yes, but they're not getting the other 25%. They said, Dave, would you pay for the other 25% of the children? Because you can't say to one child you can be fed and not another. You know, we need to feed them all. So I asked them what they needed. They come with a list of equipment for the kitchens. I paid for it. I bought a year's supply of food. I said, 3 months before you run out, I'll buy another year's supply of food. It's the second school I'm doing this with. So we're feeding hundreds of children every morning.
I thought the government's... I mean, it's still not been completely rolled out, but I thought the government was supposed to be covering all costs.
I love what the government's doing with the 75%, but we need to get the other 25. You know, we need to make sure every child is fed. I've got another one coming to me asking for library books. They're saying that parents can no longer afford the internet. So they can't afford computers. So they've come to me and said, Dave, we need library books so the kids don't fall behind, so they can go home with the books, the children that don't have internet at home. So we've put a library into a school. I think we need to look for a fairer system. We don't want to out-tax the people at ultra-mobile. We want them to pay their fair share. But if they don't want to contribute to society, then they'll have to leave.
Yeah, there's so much to discuss in what you've just said. Lots of issues raised. So don't go away. Welcome back. Dave Fishwick, Banker Dave, is still with me. Now, we were just trying to sort of focus on... You know, there are some signs in some of the statistics that maybe the economy is in a little bit better shape, and I just was really wondering whether on the ground you get any sense of that.
At the moment, we're getting an awful lot of people asking for a lot of things. Some of the letters are asking for baby milk to fill children. Some of the letters I get are from schools. I've got one in particular from Accrington, from a school that, as I mentioned before the break, that want me to put a library in. We've just put a library in a school because the parents couldn't afford the internet. We've got more schools asking for food for the kids to be fed. They're coming to school starving. There needs to be something out there, or a fairer system, because on the other side of things,
when you hear the kind of analysis, or you see the kind of analysis we've been talking about, which is day-to-day spending, for example, in schools being squeezed, the police worrying they're not going to get enough resource. I mean, you must be deeply concerned about it.
I am deeply. I mean, another letter just asking for high-vis jackets for children to cross the road. Once a day, that had been took care of with the council. They're £3.50 a jacket. It's £100 per class, you know. So we've just put high-vis jackets into schools. We cannot have that. And then something that drives me nuts, Robert, is the NatWest. We're just about to hand it back to the bankers with 10 billion of debt that the taxpayer's going to take on board. We're paying £600,000 a year to Fred the Shred on a pension. and I'm feeding children, you know. We need to get a fairer system. We need to look at where those billions are that we're prepared to take on and think, right, OK, keep the banks on for a little bit longer. Let's get the 10 billion back and let's start feeding children, putting libraries into schools and taking care of people. Then we can go after the rich and take more off them or whatever else you want to do. But there's more things that are important at the minute. We need to take care of people. We're a rich country. We should not be in a situation where school teachers have to write to the Bank of Dave and say, Dave, the kids are coming to school hungry. Please, can you buy a year's supply of food?
I mean, Dawn, Simon, there is literally no better investment any country can make than in the education and well-being of its children. And when you hear, you know, the kind of reports that, you know, Dave is coming up with, you've got to say there's a systemic failure.
So you wonder, don't you, why when the Tory government came in and the coalition, why they got rid of Sure Start and everything that was put in place to make sure that children had a good start before they started school. But the other thing that we need to do is disrupt a system and structures that have been in place for decades that actually don't work for the people. And that's what I liked about Bank of Dave, that you were trying to disrupt the banking system and how difficult that was.
I think, I mean, just on schools' budgets, I mean, the school budget is over £80 billion a year. It's critical, obviously, that we invest in our schools.
But kids should have books, so they should not be hungry in the morning. Of course they should have books,
but look, it is not the state's job to feed all children. We should be making sure that the children who need help get help, but parents should be feeding children. I think it's a really important principle.
But I think that
my kids and your kids, Dave, shouldn't be getting free school meals. We should be funding our children's food.
My grandchildren aren't getting free school meals, but the children that need free school meals should be getting them. You know, we can't have a system where there's billions of pounds being given back to the bankers, a free bank with a 10 billion tax bill, and you tell me we shouldn't be feeding children.
The banks pay a huge amount of tax, and I'm quite happy to have the bank levy at a reasonably high rate, but we can't just pretend that the state can or should do everything. I think this is a really important distinction. Of course, hungry children should get fed.
Should that not be the priority, though?
It cannot be the case that we take on... You know, you were talking a moment ago about feeding 100% of children. It should be 100% of children who need it.
100%
but it can't be every child.
Not every child needs feeding. But children that are coming to school, the school wrote to me specifically to say there's 25% of the children that the 75% isn't paying need feeding, and how can they decide who to feed and who not to feed? We shouldn't have a child who comes to school hungry in today's day and age. But we don't want to be feeding the richest and so we should. Don't get me wrong. We shouldn't be putting 100% food into Eton. You know, these are people up in the north of England who are having problems. People who are writing to me that can't put the gas and electric on. We should be looking after those. We're a rich country. That should be done first and foremost. We should be looking after the pensioners, the children, and anybody that needs it. And then whatever's left, we then look after the rest of the world.
Well, I don't disagree about charity starting at home, but you know, the welfare bill is 6 times larger than the defence budget. It's 314 billion in total.
Most people on welfare are actually working.
Yeah, and I'm all in favour of universal credit, which I think was a fantastic innovation to make sure that benefits taper as you take on more work. I'm just saying that the principle cannot be that the state should do all things for everyone. We should be, in fact, targeting the help more specifically at those in the greatest need.
Now, look, I'm really sorry. I absolutely love it when everybody else has a conversation and I don't have to join in, because it's great to have a little bit of time off. But unfortunately, I've got to end it. That's it.